Hey, so I had an invention idea or something I kind of want to build. Now, I'm not going to build it right now because I currently only have one of these things that I would want to maintain, but I could foresee having more. I'm not going to go back down that road. I'll explain in a second. Well, you'll know from the title. Uh, the reactivation of activated charcoal filters um, through vacuum chamber technology. So basically, in order to reactivate a charcoal filter, which is basically like cook out all of the adsorbed gases, absorbed. I think it's actually both with activated charcoal because it's inside the charcoal but attached to the surface inside a crack. Anyway, um, that's how you look at it. Uh, the whole idea is that you got these filters. They cost a lot of money. They are functional for the removal of gases from the air that can be potentially toxic. They're useful for um, very fine particles where other filters fail by the intrinsic nature of the material they're made of. Problem is, they're expensive and they become saturated with gases, which is why you would buy them long before they become dirty from dust particles, unless you live in a very dusty place. I'm the one to judge. Um, but you know what I mean. So there's an issue there. So I was thinking, okay, well, why can't we reactivate these charcoal filters? So I look it up and it's like, well, you can. You just have to heat it up to 900 degrees. Well, obviously, I have a carbon filter that's like um, embedded on a fabric and housed in a plastic or cardboard housing. That's not going to be heated above 400 degrees, um, and ideally not above, 150 or so. So I was just thinking, build a vacuum chamber and large enough to house the filter in question, and then, pull it down to a very low temperature and apply a mild heat and evacuate all the gases out of your filters and reuse them over and over. I know you can't necessarily have like an reusable cardboard style particle filter that's also activated carbon, but a lot of these filter systems have a pre-filter, like for the room humidifiers. They have a pre-filter, they have a good HEPA paper filter, then they have an activated charcoal filter. I have one in the room right now, and actually, let me just pull it out. So, no, this is the pre-filter. I'm glad I took this out because I had it in backwards. So anyway, here, so inside of here, there's a bunch of cracked carbon pellets. And the idea is that they absorb some of the gases out of the air. Problem is, if I were to get any sort of function out of this thing in a real world application, in theory it's right, but in real world application, these carbon pellets become completely saturated with gas. I mean, if you smoke around them, probably in a week, maybe a month. If you don't smoke around them and you're just normal room air, probably 3 months. You know, so are you gonna replace this every 3 months? No, you're gonna buy it as a part of an expensive system. Maybe replace the filter once every 2 or 3 years, you know? And if that, they're not being used in a way that makes them function. So, what would be required to make this thing functional? Well, a vacuum chamber that probably pulls it down to, 30, 40 microns, while simultaneously heating it up to about 50 degrees and venting anything that comes off of it outside. Something like that could be built pretty easily, and it would serve an actual purpose. Because there's a lot of filters like this out there, and the people that buy them care about their, uh, you know, professionally. Oftentimes, they're working in nursing homes or they're working in burn units or whatever the case may be, and there's like an increased level of concern for a reason. So they would want them to work, you know, and the rate of replacement is just not. It's just not reasonable for to make them really a functional product in the market, in my opinion. But if you could put something like this into a vacuum chamber and get to that saturation temperature at a pressure where the plastic chamber isn't going to melt, or the plastic case isn't going to melt, but all the gases stored in the charcoal are released and can be vented out, so the charcoal can absorb more gas, and then you put it back in, and you could do that once a month and have a fully functional charcoal activated charcoal factory, and it wouldn't um, be that difficult to build. It's really a vacuum chamber. The question is, how big of a vacuum chamber do you build? Because if you are doing something like this, you could probably evacuate something like this in a heated vacuum chamber, I'm guessing, in 15 minutes. Maybe a little bit more. I don't really know, because it would be really, like, I would have to have my um, like formaldehyde detector on the exhaust and wait for the formaldehyde levels to drop, and then maybe trust that that's not like stuff breaking down off the plastic. But that's how I would do it if I were to test it. But I think that's probably the only way to really build like an at-home charcoal filter reactivation module. And I think there's a real place for it in the marketplace. I mean, not that we live in a marketplace anymore. You know, it's dead. But if it wasn't, I think that's a viable product, honestly, because charcoal filters are expensive. You know, you could have a whole house charcoal filter, and you could spend $150 on it for one filter. And after 1 month, it's as good as a paper filter. 1 month. So, would you buy, a $500, vacuum pump and maybe a $200 chamber to reuse that every month instead of not wasting your money in the first place, just buying a paper filter, which is what you should do with the current products available, or build a vacuum chamber and reactivate your charcoal filter. Now, I've looked it up. far as I know, like nobody's got one. I'm gonna do a deeper dive because a lot of times like the initial Google search doesn't unveil every product available, just like the ones listed by Google. But a vacuum chamber should be able to, like, I not even any like scholarly articles on the topic popped up, like research done on reactivation at low pressure. It was just no, you got to heat them up to 900 degrees. So, I think that that's something that's worth building. Wait for my next job.